Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another round Basis Picks. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's appreciated. Now, as you guys saw yesterday, we did basically the triple header for all of the Japanese cards taking place Friday, Sunday and Monday. But now it's time for Riyadh season. The big event on Saturday, taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Yeah, this one is all about the undercard. Main event, you get that one tomorrow. So yeah, I'm not doing every fight. Some fights aren't worthy of a prediction, but yeah, there's some interesting ones on here. So without further ado, let's get into the picks. So the first match I'm going to talk about will be, I guess for purposes of this video, future undisputed Skye Nicholson taking on the Omen Raven Chapman. Skye Nicholson is 11-0 with 1 KO. Raven Chapman is 9-0 with 2 KOs. Both women have faced a decent level of opposition on their way to the top and on their way to this opportunity. Skye Nicholson, one thing I will give her credit for is when Amanda Serrano vacated the WBC belt for them not allowing her to face her competitors in 12 3-minute rounds. Skye Nicholson, who was the interim WBC champion, said, I don't want to win the belt just by being elevated. I want to win it in the ring. So she ended up facing Sarah Mahfood, who was the previous, I believe it was the IBF champion, and she won the belt off of her in the ring as opposed to being elevated. So yeah, give her full props for that. Then you look at sort of some of the opposition. You know, she's had some decent level victories. I guess the most notable one outside of the world title fight was the Lucy Wildheart fight, where, you know, she got her first stoppage. Now it was a corner stoppage. They kind of threw the towel in. Lucy was never out on her feet or, you know, buzzed, but, you know, her nose was kind of busted up and they just felt, well, she's not winning this fight. She's losing every round, so we might as well pull her out and save her from herself. Now you had that. You also had the Diana Vargas fight, which was, you know, a decent one. The Mahfood fight was very, you know, was a very accomplished bout in that sense. But I guess when you look at Skye Nicholson, the one fight you look at which actually gave her the most amount of trouble was the fight against the least proficient, the least technically good looking, the least well schooled, maybe the least talented opponent she faced in Tania Alvarez. And purely that was because Tania Alvarez just had this style of just getting right in front of her and trying to throw punches. Now for the first 3-4 rounds, Skye Nicholson just dominated and made, you know, just made it almost a laughing stock, like what's going on here. But after that, like when sort of, you know, Tania's just, she's not letting up, she's not allowing her to breathe, and she's having to clinch and having to hold and get on the inside, and it started to get a little bit more rough and you know, physically taxing, and you started to see the engine go. You started to say, oh, there's a tactic there, there's a method to be able to get her out of her comfort zone. The only problem is it took Tania about 6 rounds before that happened. 6-7 rounds before Skye was really holding on for dear life. But by that point, she banked too many rounds and it was over. But there was a blueprint there. On the other hand, now you've got Raven Chapman. Now she's faced very durable, very well schooled people, the likes of Jorgelina Guanini. Although, you know, I know her best days were at a slightly lighter weight, but she came up in weight, started facing people in featherweight. She you know, had really sort of a good style, and that was a fight that worked well for Raven and sort of how she likes to go about things. You also had the Lily Furtado fight. The Lucy Sedlakova fight was also a decent one. The Johanna Sarabia fight. So she's had, you know, a decent level of opposition as well, but clearly the person with the best victory and probably the better round overall has to be Skye Nicholson. Now, if we're looking at this fight in terms of a sort of a keys to victory for both people. Well, look, Sky Nicholson, I think it's fairly obvious how she wins this fight and how she makes this fight a very, very easy night. She's got to be able to sit behind the jab. She's got to be able to pump that jab out with authority. So not just a flick jab, not just a jab to, a jab so that she can spin off to the side. It's got to be a jab that basically knocks Raven's head back or knocks her chest, knocks into her chest, just literally prevents her from being able to get into range quickly to obviously try and work. After the jab, she's then got to employ that backhand, so that back left hand. She's got to be able to spin off from angles, throw that hand looping from the side, or even straight down the pipe if she can get it into play. But she's got to be able to do that consistently, and throughout a good solid 2 minutes of at least the first 4 to 5 rounds, just to make Raven a bit more hesitant to sort of want to trade, so that she can then slow down the pace and can fight the rest of the fight in her own natural pace at her own speed and take things sort of more comfortably that way. So that's ultimately her keys to victory. Footwork is going to be the key, making sure that she can keep her right foot on the outside of Raven's, making sure that she can spin off and get out of range, and to make sure that obviously her gas tank is good enough for her to be able to do that for the full 10 rounds, 2 minutes apiece. Raven Chapman, on the other hand, her keys to victory in this fight, she's got a better punch selection than Sky. Sky's work is a lot cleaner and maybe a lot crisper. Raven's is a bit more dogged, rugged, maybe rough and ready, but she throws better combinations inside, and she's also got a very good body game. Like her body punching is one of her best assets. Now, my key to her to win this fight, she's got to push the action early. She's got to be able to get underneath Sky Nicholson's jab. She's then got to be able to get on the inside. Hopefully there's a referee that will allow them to work both in the clinch and both up close. She's got to be able to cut the ring off to stop Sky from being able to exit out of corners and out of alleyways. She's got to be able to get her towards the ropes. She can't have Sky trying to dictate the pace from the middle of the ring. She's got to be able to back her up behind the double jab, try to work the body, get on the inside, accept that she's going to take a couple of shots maybe on entry, but she's got to keep pushing the pace from the first second of the fight up until the last second of whenever the fight ends. Now, in that process, there is a big chance that she will probably lose a couple of rounds early, trying to push the pace, maybe get made to look even a bit silly from time to time if Sky does steps out, makes her miss a big shot, etc. But she's got to be willing to keep digging down, keep going in, keep cutting that ring off. Every time that she steps towards Sky, she's got to pump that jab out. She's got to make her, have to think about what's coming, coming her direction. So it can't just be about the footwork. It's got to be the hands moving in unison, and she's got to do that enough that she can mentally and physically just start to slow Sky down, tire her out a little bit, and just have to make her work. Obviously that's the best game plan. Invest in the body and then maybe take the fight over in the mid to late rounds of the bout. How do I see the fight playing out? Well, I've given you the keys to victory. Ultimately, I think this is classic pure boxer versus pressure fighter. But Raven is a very smart pressure fighter. She will be able to get inside Sky's jab. I do believe that she will be able to get into range. Now, the interesting thing is going to be, will she be allowed to work up close, mid-range, on the inside? Will Sky try to clinch? Will Raven try to clinch? How will they get in? Will she be able to push her back towards the ropes? Personally, I think the first 3 to 4 rounds, maybe even the first 5, it's going to be a 3-2 type fight in Sky Nicholson's favor. I feel like she's probably going to take the first 2 rounds quite comfortably, maybe step off the gas a little bit in the third, and then maybe take the 4th, but then possibly lose the 5th. And then the back half of the fight is where I think, because of the natural pressure and the punch variety, and the working to the body. And obviously there's been a lot of rounds these two have sparred as amateurs previously. I think they know each other's strengths and weaknesses in that sense as well. But I do think in the second half of the fight, where Sky is going to be trying to catch breaks, I think Raven's still going to be pushing the action. I think she's still going to be trying to push the pace. And for those reasons, I feel like she's going to be able to take enough air out of Sky's tires to slow her down so that she can get those punches in range. Obviously, Sky's going to battle back, but I just feel like the second half of the fight, Raven will take it more convincingly than Sky maybe takes the first half. So I can see it sort of 3-2 in that first half to Sky, but I can kind of see it more of a 4-1-ish type scenario to Raven in the second half. This fight could quite convincingly end up in a draw. I wouldn't be surprised to see a 95-95 scorecard across, maybe a majority in that sense. But I do think that just based on the actual work rate and the styles themselves, I think the pressure style and the combination punching and the body punching of Raven Chapman will ultimately get more consideration, and she will be the busier of the two fighters. So because of that, I do think Raven Chapman will win this fight via I'm reckoning probably a split decision. I don't think it's going to be unanimous, but I think she's going to get it via a split or maybe a majority. But again, the draw, I wouldn't rule the draw out either. Okay, so next we've got to talk about Ben the Surgeon Whitaker versus Liam Cameron. Now, this is one of those fights where I said I like the fight for Ben. I didn't like the fight in terms of for Riyadh season. You guys already know my feelings and thoughts on that. Again, I'm really happy that Ben's getting the bag. You guys know I'm a supporter of Ben Whitaker. He's given me his time on numerous occasions. I'm good with his dad. Like, I've got nothing but love and admiration and respect for him and the family. But I still feel like he should have been building that bigger brand in the UK. I think that's maybe more of an issue of Ben Shalom as opposed to him. But, as long as he's making his money, like, no issues. That being said, we look at Liam Cameron. Obviously, he came back a little bit earlier this year. I think it was around April time. And he came in against Lyndon Arthur, ended up losing a split decision. That's after having nearly 4 years out the ring of a drug violation for recreational drugs, so not even performance enhancing. UCAD do some nasty work at times, but hey, such is life. Prior to that though, he was actually, I think he was fighting the majority of his career at like 154, 160 pounds. So he had to lose a lot of weight to get back to light heavy, but ultimately, that's where he is now. Now, naturally, Ben is the naturally bigger of the two, outside of the fact obviously Liam put on a lot of weight. So, but Liam is he's a very well-schooled amateur. He had quite a bit of success in the amateurs, before turning pro. So he's from the same sort of schooling. So he's very capable, very good in terms of defensively responsible, good footwork, jab, right hand, punch selection is not bad. He works at a diligent pace. It's not the fastest, it's not the slowest, it's just consistent, and that's one thing I will give him. Ben Whitaker, on the other hand, I think you guys know there's a lot of flash and there's a lot of pizzazz, there's some sizzle, but there's also a lot of stake there. So there's a lot of substance. He's a very well-schooled amateur. He's been boxing, I believe, since the age of 8. So, 26 now. There's a good, there's a very, very good sample size that you kind of look at in that mode. So you say, well, he's well-schooled, well-drilled, naturally an athlete, naturally very coordinated, very good footwork. I mean, I don't think anyone in boxing at the moment has better coordination and footwork just from an athletic or a natural standpoint. His footwork isn't something necessarily would have to work on. Again, dancing background, very rhythmic. He's that's the type of opponent, that's the type of person he is. Sorry. So yeah, in terms of now with Ben, the first several fights, there was, you know, some very big highlight reel knockouts when he was with Sugar Hill Stewart. Since then, people have complained that the knockouts aren't really coming, but to be fair, he's 8-0 with 5 KOs, so he's still got above a 50% knockout. He's still knocked out more people than he hasn't as a pro. But yeah, the last couple haven't, you know, they've gone the distance, so people are wondering, well, is the knockout power there? Is it real? Like, what's the situation? But Ben Whittaker, if you're looking at him just to be a knockout merchant, then you're missing the appeal of him as a boxer. Like, if you're going to liken him to someone in terms of, I guess, how they operate, it would be very much like a Dimitri Bivol, someone that's got enough power that they can take you out if you give them the opportunity to, but there's enough power there for them to stun you. But outside of that, if they aren't threatened or aren't needing to go through the gears, they'll beat you quite comfortably in the lowest possible gears and go home quite safe and sound. That to me sort of strikes on how Ben Whittaker is. I think there is some spite there, and there are some evil intentions, but I feel like the right type of opponent has to bring that out, and it's got to be an opponent that's actually trying to fire back, where the openings are there for the counter punching or to catch them when they're unawares, as opposed to someone that's being very, very defensively minded. In this fight, ultimately, I think that Liam Cameron is going to be, I think he's actually going to be in the fight quite well in the second half of it. I think in the first few rounds, Ben Whittaker, the speed, the accuracy, the movement, and, you know, maybe little, I don't think there's going to be as much showboating as we've seen previously, but there will be enough that he will be getting the eyes of the and the attention of the audience and obviously the public. I do think in the second half of the fight, maybe when Ben either decides to turn it off a little bit or just decides to slow down, maybe feeling like it's going his way, but he's not finding the necessary punches to really hurt and damage Liam Cameron. I think Liam's going to be able to sort of come back into it when Ben slows down a bit. I don't think it would be to the necessary where he's going to be winning a huge amount of rounds. I think it's a 10 rounder as opposed to a 12. So I do see Ben Whittaker winning quite comfortably on points. I'm looking at it as like maybe a 97-93 type fight, where, you know, Liam just outworks him in a few rounds. Maybe when Ben's trying to take them off, maybe looking for some openings, hoping that something will open up. But I do see Ben Whittaker winning the fight. I don't see it via KO, not because he's not capable. I just think that Liam Cameron won't give him the opportunities that he needs to get one. But that being said, I could be wrong. Ben could wipe him out in the first 3 to 4 rounds. We've seen him do it before, so it's not outside the realm of possibility. But for my money, just based on how I've seen both guys operating as of late, I'm going with Ben Whittaker to win the fight via unanimous decision quite comfortably. Next up, we've got Jai Opetaia against Jack One Smack Massey for the IBF and Ring Magazine Cruiserweight Championship. Jack Massey's EBU European Championship and his Commonwealth Championship are not on the line. Although if I was Jai, I'd say no, run that the Commonwealth title. I'm a part of the Commonwealth. I can fight for that. Let me get that as just another trinket, you know, for having to take a fight that isn't a unification. That's what I would have personally said. But anyway, that being said, looking at this one, you've got Jack Massey. He's been in the ring with Richard Riakporhe. He's been in the ring with Isaac Chamberlain. He's been in the ring with Joseph Parker. So Richard Riakporhe, very big puncher, but Jack Massey was able to sort of stand up to that power, although that was Richard Riakporhe that was a lot more green, not as good at setting things up, not as good as setting traps as a pro. He also, again, went in the ring 10 rounds with Joseph Parker. That was a Joseph Parker coming off of a knockout loss to Joe Joyce. Maybe a Joseph Parker that maybe he had ideas that Jack Massey wouldn't be as tough and durable, maybe just got to hit him a couple times and win the fight. That's not the way it played out. Jack is extremely durable. He's a very basic fighter in terms of, like, there's no frills, it's nuts and bolts boxing, ABC style, but it is very effective, and he's very well schooled in that basicness. So I don't say that as a a disrespect or a detraction from what he is, but that with him being very sort of basic comes predictability. You kind of know the shots he's going to try and throw in a fight, and you kind of know the moves that the movements he's going to make prior to throwing a certain shot, or the order in which he'll throw a shot. The jab is going to come out first, then he's maybe going to try to throw another jab, then he's going to throw the backhand, try to get up close, and then maybe rip a left hook to the body. Like there's a certain rhythm, like I said, it's a predictability that you kind of expect from someone drilled in a certain style of boxing. Whereas on the other hand, you've got Jai Opetaia, obviously southpaw, so obviously he's coming from different angles. But outside of that, he's very much a more, he's a bit more sort of fluid in terms of what he's going to throw. You never quite know what shot he's thinking about until he throws it. Sometimes I'm not sure if he thinks what shot he's looking for until he sees the opening. You can guarantee that there will be several backhands to the body, to the gut. He always likes to throw a very hard and fast backhand down to the gut early on, just to maybe show that there's some power there, but to see if he can take some wind out of the sails. He will throw the jab, he will try to throw combinations, he will try to throw hooks, especially early, darting in and out style, very springy on the front foot, also on the back foot. So in terms of the styles, you're going to have Jack Massey trying to hold his position in the ring. I don't think he'll be taking center, trying to hold center, but he's not going to be looking to get pushed back too often. Whereas Jai Opetaia will be moving around the periphery a little bit more, trying to just find openings or ways that he can get through the guard, as I predict that Jack Massey is going to be trying to operate a very tight guard in this bout. The first few rounds I do think are going to be not competitive as such, but I think they're going to be they're not going to be smooth sailing for Jai Opetaia specifically. I think Jack Massey is going to have some success in there. He is the slightly taller guy. I think he's got slightly longer reach as well, so there may be issues with Opetaia trying to actually get past that lead hand, past that jab. He may have to take some risks, which could involve him possibly falling over the front foot, just trying to throw a power shot here and there. I have been told that he's looking to get back to more of his boxing in this fight, as opposed to just looking for the big power punches. So he may in fact tighten up the occasions where he's trying to just get that one big shot in. So I feel like they're going to be quite close and competitive in those first few rounds. I think Jai will be winning those, but they will be spirited, and I think Massey will get some opportunities. Where I do see it get changing is probably, I think, round 5, round 6 will be a moment where Jack Massey, I feel, will probably get a bit comfortable in the fight, feel like, okay, it's actually not as it's not what I believed it to be. Maybe he might relax or try to push the pace a little bit, thinking, okay, I've seen Jai slow down before, I can get him when he's a bit tired, and try to see if he can then sort of pick up the pace a little bit, similar to, I guess, what he did with Isaac Chamberlain. But in those moments is where I can see Jai Opetaia finding an opening through a guard. Maybe at one moment the guard isn't as tight as it needs to be, and Jai finds the shot that goes through, which causes an issue, and then essentially I see a scenario where he then pretty much works over Jack Massey in a similar fashion to how he did Jordan Thompson. Probably be 2 or 3 rounds of a sustained beating at that point. I reckon it will culminate in either a corner maybe throwing in a towel, or the referee jumping in after a point of time, feeling like, Jack Massey may be taking way too much and it's probably not worth him staying in the fight. I don't know if he'll get dropped, and if he does get dropped, I definitely think he will beat the count. I I think it's going to be one of those attritional beatings where it's just sort of it's consistent round after round from like round 6, round 7 onwards, and then sort of after maybe 3 rounds they just decide it's not going our way, I don't want you taking anymore, so we're going to stop this fight. So I do pick Jai Patel to win the fight via a late TKO stoppage, probably between rounds 10 to 11, but Jack Massey will acquit himself quite well in the first quarter, the first third of the fight at least, and will go out, you know, sort of he will go out on his feet as opposed to on his back. That's my prediction. Let me know yours. And last but by no means least, you've got Fabio WARdley versus Frazier Clarke 2. Now, yes, there has been an omission in these predictions. Yeah, you guys know why. I don't even need to say anything. There's been a couple, but one specifically, and it's going to stay omitted. I think everyone knows what's going to happen there. This is the fight that is the most intriguing. Now, I've already given my prediction for this on several platforms. You know, I don't usually do that, but on this occasion, I have done. But if you guys want to know how I've come to that conclusion and that decision, so I'll tell you the prediction now. In the first fight, I predicted that Frazier Clarke would win the fight. I thought his amateur schooling would be too much. He'd be able to control the fight behind his jab, walk Fabio WARdley into punches, and just basically win enough rounds to win the fight on points. Possibly, I said possibly he could get a very late stoppage, but I believed it would go the distance and he would win on points. I was in attendance and I believe that he did win the fight. I gave it 8 rounds to 4 to him, so 114, 112 overall. But I can understand if people gave Fabio more rounds than I did in the fight. And of the two, even though Fabio's face made you think that he got battered just because of his nose situation, the person who was visibly hurt a lot more in that fight out of either person was Frazier Clarke. Now, you look at both guys. Like I said, I predicted Frazier would win and I actually scored the fight towards him. That was on a Sky Sports and Boxer card, right? So Fabio WARdley at the time was the rank outsider. He had no promoter to his name. He was a free agent, sort of going where the money was. That gives you no security. That gives you no preferential treatment. That gives you no, in some aspects, fairness, right? So you're at the behest and you're at the mercy of the promoter that you're, you know, working with at that time. That's not to say that I think there was anything untoward happening, but if Frazier Clarke was ever going to get a opportunity or a better opportunity to win, you know, that British title, that was going to be it. I don't think there was going to be a better scenario for him. Now you've got Fabio WARdley signed to Frank Warren and Queensberry. Queensberry are the lead promoters of Riyadh season, with Matchroom sort of being second in command for the most part, even though Matchroom usually delivered the more fighters throughout the cards. But, you know, everything goes through Queensberry. You want to get press accreditations, it all runs through Queensberry. And I can't hit up the Matchroom people and ask them for entry into these places. Like, everything is done on the Queensberry side, so they are pretty much the, you know, sort of the number one head. So the people that are running it are the people that Fabio WARdley is now signed to. Boxer have just sort of been allowed in on a mass scale in this one. You know, they had Martin Bacoli on a couple before, but this is their first real foray into Riyadh season, so they are very much the away players in this. And I think part of that may be to the detriment of Frazier Clarke, especially when you consider that while I did think he won the first fight, and yes, he's a lot better schooled than Fabio WARdley, the fact that he had a life and death battle with Fabio WARdley, who had 3 white collar bouts before turning pro, and has had at the time when they fought, I think it was 18 pro fights, so 21 bouts in total as a professional or as a boxer, compared to Frazier, who had at least 60 amateur bouts. I would say I'm sure there's more than that, because he's been in the amateur system for about 8 to 10 years. He's been boxing since the age of 8, I think. He turned over as a pro at, I think, at the age of 30. So 8 years in the amateurs, got a bronze medal at the Olympics. So you're not supposed to be in there looking at the same level as a guy that came from white collar, that's figuring things out on the spot, that started boxing at the age of, I think, 19, and he's 29 now, so 10 years. All of that tells me, if you look at who can improve, I feel like Fabio WARdley can maybe learn more, because he's got less of the amateur style, less of that sort of that mentality drilled into him. Frazier, I don't think, can change as much, because he's been constantly coached in a very similar style, and the level of time that it's going to take to unlearn certain things, to add new things, to add new wrinkles, is just going to be a lot difficult for him, more difficult. He's a slightly older guy, it's only 4 years, but doing what he's been doing, the repetition he's been doing year after year after year, is going to be very hard to unlearn that. His muscle memory is a lot more set in stone, whereas I feel like Fabio WARdley's is a bit more malleable. Now, Fabio doesn't have a great guard. His jab is okay, but his straight punches, and obviously his looping punches, are his best punches. Sometimes he can be left open, you can counter him straight through the middle, but I believe that if of the two of them, I would trust and rate Fabio WARdley's chin to take a hard shot more than I would trust Frazier Clark's at this point in time. Frazier's best way to win this fight is ultimately to stay behind the jab, similar to what he was doing in the first fight, but he's got to stand in the center of the ring and make Fabio have to use his legs. He can't be trying to move. He's got to stay planted to the center. He's got to be dictating which way Fabio is trying to throw his shots from. But the problem is, as in the first fight, he had all the opportunities to do that the first time, and ended up getting sucked into a fight that Fabio wanted, which is just stand in front of me, let's go, let's try and swing it out, and let's see who basically gets there first. Ultimately, because of that, and Fabio is looking at this as if it's round 13, I just see a scenario where Frazier's going to try to enact some moments of calm, some precision, some moments of pace, but Fabio is just going to make him end up in another dogfight. That's not to say I don't think Frazier Clark can handle that dogfight, but that's not his best effort. That's not where he needs to be to win this fight. He needs to be able to control the pace, control the flow, and control the punch selection. Being just in those moments where it's basically mano a mano, like round after round after round, I think eventually his engine will wear out quicker than Fabio WARdley's will. He has been losing a lot more weight. He's been getting himself into better shape, but with losing that weight, has he lost any of his punch resistance? He's already, tasted the floor once with Fabio. He's already been, in a desperately, what we will say, like a sort of a desperate scenario where he's basically sagging on the ropes at the end of the fight, struggling for breath. It was a very hard, taxing fight. Those two things mixed together, I just think Fabio WARdley, with all the considerations of Riyadh, Queensbury and everything, will have just a bit more impetus to kind of go for it and take risks, knowing that he still will get consideration on the cards if it was to go that far. Unfortunately, I actually don't think it's going to go that far. I do think that Frazier Clark is going to taste the ground again in this fight, possibly more than once. And I do see a scenario where by the 7th round, he ends up getting waved off, just maybe taking too much punishment, gets knocked down a couple times, does manage to get back to his feet, but the referee sees the writing on the wall and probably jumps in to stop the fight. So yeah, I'm going for Fabio Wardley to win the fight this time via 7th round KO, purely because I just think that Frazier's not going to be able to implement the game plan he needs to go to go through this fight and go through the fire that he went through in the first one. So that's kind of my prediction on it. Please let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you think I'm wrong, please tell me why, tell me what you think, and I will have fun watching it with you guys on the weekend. But with that being said, that's the end of this section of Basis Picks. Please check out the video tomorrow to find out how I see the main event going. We're going to go into some depth on that one, so again, it might be another lengthy video, but hopefully you guys appreciate that. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share. For right now, it's Basis Picks locked.